Joe, I don't know what to do. You know what? Let's grab a drink. Let's have a happy hour.
Hello and welcome back to the United Happy Hour. Pauly, I'm having to hit the strong stuff today. I'm on the Dr. Pepper. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. Look, I suppose this show will probably, people will get more excitement after watching the walls behind us, Pauly, than they did watching the match last night. Look, with the United Happy Hour, Pauly, so let's try and put a smile on some people's faces. Let's try and show some perspective. Guys who are watching today, do get in the comments. Let us know what you think about, the game last night, and it's pretty obvious, and also, the current state of this United squad and where we are as a club. Pauly, I know you'll have watched the match last night, mate. You never miss one. You probably wish you'd missed this one, but what's your overall thoughts on what happened last night?
Blah. It wasn't surprising. I figured we were going to drop points the second I saw that tweet Monday night about Hodgson complaining that the game got moved up because we have so many first-team players out. And I was like, oh, that means United are going to drop points. I looked at the team and I worried before the match. I worried. I said, where's the creativity coming from? Where are the goals going to come from? You could put your goal scorers on the pitch, but if you don't create for them, then you're going to have problems. And that's what Rashford and Cavani and Greenwood are. They're goal scorers. Rashford's more of the forward. He can do both, but he's not a creative player. He's the player that'll make the final pass. But you got to get him. Someone needs to make the pass before the pass. And that's the reality of what those three players are. So when you see the team and you go, there's no creativity in this team other than Bruno Fernandes, and how are we going to get the ball to them? I had a feeling this was going to go sour, and it did very quickly. But at the same time, you look and you go, well, what other options do we have? You look at the bench. We had a whole back four on the bench: Williams, Tellez, Twanzebe, I think Lindelof. But there were four defenders on the bench out of how many spots?
That bench looked as weak as it's looked for a long time, Paul, especially from an attacking point of view. And I think the state of the squad yesterday told a lot of stories in itself. There was probably more stories around the squad. The fact that David De Gea was missing. Now, we know that that's for personal reasons. I'm aware that his wife is due to give birth.
Yeah, I think it's good old-fashioned paternity leave, and it all checks out. They announced the pregnancy in November. And by my math, if the baby's coming now, it's a little bit early, which makes it an urgent situation and why he had to leave the team. But you hope that I think it's safe to assume that it's some pregnancy related. And so wishing good health and everything. The 6-game timeline puts you right at the international break. He'll have to quarantine when he gets back. So this would give him a month with his family. And then he comes back and, it's 6 games, but it's also 2 Europa League games, maybe an FA Cup match in there. It's a great opportunity for Dean Henderson. This is what you needed. We always talk about that is for defenders and goalkeepers. It's very difficult to get in because you make one mistake, the manager can't trust you. You need a situation where if you make a mistake, the manager has no choice but to go back to you the next game. So big opportunity for Dean Henderson.
No, totally agree. Paulie, we're going to get on to what's on social media straight away because there's so much to get through. Yastai's message in here saying if this board is not going to spend much, then we definitely need a better manager. Look, we're going to cover all this, guys, later on in the show. Ollie can be good if he gets all the players he wants, but with this board, forget it. Rashford may be a clutch player, but he definitely isn't a good finish. We will talk about all these different aspects because there's a lot of talk about the manager, and I think it's very folly to believe that just if you change a manager, that all of a sudden everything's going to be right with this club. Over the last 7 years, I think there's enough evidence to suggest that it can't always be the manager's fault. But anyway, Paulie, let's get on to what's on social media. Hello, and yeah, what's on social media, Paulie, is always our first segment, but we have got so much to cover, including, some news that we didn't get a chance to go over on Tuesday, and that was the whole Andy Mitten, Paul Pogba story. Paul Pogba is open to the idea of discussing a new MUFC contract. Now, Andy Mitten, I'm sure everyone who watches the show is familiar with him. He is a very well-connected journalist when it comes to Manchester United. Seems to know his stuff. It's interesting, though. We've obviously had some more comments from Mino Raiola, and well, we always do, don't we? And it seems very contrary to what Raiola has to say. But Paulie, what do you make of all this, and where do you stand, and what's the chances of Paul Pogba staying beyond the season, do you think?
I've always thought he would probably stay. And I think if you go back to last week here, Raiola came out and spoke again because, I don't know, he was feeling bored, feeling like we weren't talking about him. And he said, and he tried to backtrack on his words. And he was like, oh, when I said Paul Pogba was done at Manchester United, I was just giving my opinion on the matter. I wasn't saying that as definitive fact. It was just in my opinion. Why can't I give my opinion? And it was, why are you doing this, Mino? And it's probably because you overplayed your hand again. You're doing this for one of two reasons. One is because you've discovered what we all knew. No one's got the money to buy Paul Pogba, and if they do have the money, they're not going to choose to spend it on Paul Pogba. He's been too injured recently. He's been unreliable. You're not spending that kind of money on him. Two, I need to make amends with a club that I might have pissed off recently because I'm going to have to do business with them, either in regards to getting my client a new contract, or if there is a blonde-haired striker that is playing at a club that wears yellow and black, and I'm trying to facilitate a big money move, I kind of need them to be in the bidding war as well.
You're talking about Marco Reus, right?
Exactly. So Mino backtracking on that, and to me, it's not surprising that Paul Pogba is open to another contract. At no point have I ever gotten the impression that Paul Pogba was not happy in Manchester. Or wanted to leave Manchester, with the exception of maybe that we weren't really providing the winning team. But this season, he sees where we're going. Last season too, he sees that we have changed directions and where we're going, and it's better. I've always just gotten the impression he wants money. He wants to be paid like a superstar, and he's going to use us to get that contract. And if we're not going to give it to him, then maybe, Real Madrid will, or Juventus will. But ultimately, we're probably in the position to give him the most money. And because of that, he'll probably stay. And good. We need him to stay now, because last night was a big, not just last night, Sunday and last week. And West Brom, it's just countless examples. They all look exactly like this team looked last year. This is life without Paul Pogba. And there were two time periods where we didn't have Pogba where things were okay. The first was when Bruno first arrived last year, and results started happening. But most of those results were in the Europa League, the FA Cup. We played 5 games between when Bruno arrived and Pogba and lockdown. We won 3 of them. 2 of them we looked like crap, or we only looked good in 2 of those 5 games. Against Wolves, we looked like crap. Against Chelsea, we looked like crap in a game that could have gone either way. We scored twice. They did not. Neither team created legitimate chances. We scored on a couple of our half chances. Against Watford, we were brilliant, but that was 19th placed Watford, and we were only brilliant for the second half. Against Everton was probably our worst game of the season. We were played off the pitch by them, lucky to get out of that 1-1. And against City was probably our best game of the season. So 2 of those games we looked really good. The other 3, not so good. We covered it up because we escaped with some draws. And then this season at the beginning, in October, November, when we didn't have Pogba, we managed to paper over some cracks a bit because of Juan Mata being in the team to help out and provide that other creative aspect. Southampton, we came roaring back to win 3-2. Donny van de Beek kind of played that Juan Mata role off on the left, and that helped paper over the cracks. But the signs were there if you don't have a second creative player. And I remember saying this back in January, is if Paul Pogba got hurt, we're at the point now where Donny van de Beek wouldn't be the replacement, but Juan Mata would be. That's the player you need in the team. And Mata's hurt right now. Van de Beek is hurt. Pogba's hurt. This just looks like that team last year when Pogba was hurt. There's no creativity. We're devoid of it. And if we know we need a right winger, we know we need a defensive midfielder, we probably need a striker, we probably need a center back. If Paul Pogba leaves, you need a midfielder, and that jumps the list of priorities, because if you don't have someone that can provide you with some creativity from the middle, you're in a lot of trouble. And if you go back to Boxing Day, you look at this team with and without Pogba, their scoring is up, their shots are up a little bit, but the number highlighted here is the expected goals. They're creating less when Pogba's not on the pitch than when he is. And this is a big problem, because that number is heavily inflated by that Southampton match, by that 9-0 match to Southampton. And if you take the that Southampton match out of the equation, all of a sudden it looks really bleak. This team's not scoring when they're scoring the same amount of goals, because they aren't exactly scoring with Pogba, but they're not creating anything. So when Pogba's on the pitch, it's really that they're just not finishing. When he's not on the pitch, they're not even creating chances for themselves to not finish. And that's exactly what we saw last night. Just nothing. No creativity. It's a huge concern. It's a huge issue.
I think one of the biggest things that I'm noticing as well since Pogba's been gone, Pauly, just how important Paul Pogba's presence on the pitch is for someone like Bruno Fernandes. So, look, we talk about creating for our strikers, but even for Bruno, just to take some of that burden off of him, even maybe, it is another cog in the creative machine that is Manchester United. Because, I mean, we've talked about it many times on the show about Bruno dropping off into spaces, and he's not as effective when he drops deep. But, man, he was taking that to another level last night. I mean, I'm seeing Bruno. Bruno was even at the stages in the second half where Bruno's coming into the back line. I mean, it was that bad. He was that deep at times, and you just don't have that when Pogba's on the pitch. And I think when you look at when Bruno's been at his best for United, you look at like after Project Restart, Pauly, when we had Pogba fit and Bruno, and there was no coincidence that we were playing really well then. Then you look at obviously the run that we had from October up until the start of the new year, with Bruno and Pogba being heavily involved in all the success that we have. There's no coincidence now when you take Pogba out of this team, just the difference it does make. And it's an interesting insight into what the future would be if all these people that want to see the back of Paul Pogba, if he does indeed leave, because I think we're seeing a little snapshot now of what we can expect, because it's going to be very difficult for Manchester United to reinvest any money that they get for Paul Pogba this summer, if they were to, or even if they're not, to go and buy a player of Paul Pogba's ilk, isn't it?
Yeah, it always comes down to the same things of, you got to get the ball to your good players quickly and in places where they can be dangerous. And yesterday, we saw it. Everything against Chelsea, we saw it. Everything just goes wide and around. Midfielder, square to midfielder, to the wide player. Then maybe the fullback goes up to the winger, but then the winger just cuts inside. And look, we all want to. So many people are putting this on the manager, and you look around at this team, what else could he have done yesterday? They don't have a midfielder that can pass forward. So you ended up playing two defensive midfielders against Palace, which is a joke. But you're going to put McTominay in there who can't pass either. Yeah, McTominay could shoot, and he came on and, I mean, ghosted in between the lines, like exactly what Donny van de Beek does. He beautifully ghosted in between the lines. And Eric Bailly, who spent the entire game passing to nobody other than Harry Maguire, made a perfect pass to put him right into the box, and somehow McTominay didn't shoot, even though shooting is the best part of his game. It's everybody. It boggles my mind. The team itself just is missing a lot.
Yeah.
And we could see that they are a team full of average players, good players, with one player who's good, maybe great, and one star, maybe superstar. And that's
what I don't understand, Paulie. Everyone in the summer acknowledged that there was gaps in this squad. Everybody, after the transfer window, it's the usual thing in the summertime with United. Everybody turns their focus onto the Glazers and there's not enough investment, everything like that. Everyone acknowledged that this team was missing a right winger. We fast forward to January, February, March, and we're coming toward the business end of the season. And all of a sudden now, those holes are still there in the squad, yet we're not blaming the same people we were blaming in the summer now. And nothing has changed. I just think, how can your focus be there at that point in the season? And then I get that the season starts and you have to work with what you've got, Paulie. But if you can acknowledge in September that what you've got is not good enough, and you've still got the same when you get to March, then what's different?
There's nothing different. That's the problem. There's nothing different. It's boring to say it, and you can look at what should Ollie do, because let's face it. Last year, and no matter what he does, he's going to get criticized. Let's face it. Last year, he became a counter-attacking manager at the beginning of the season, won on the counter, and everybody criticized for him. Oh yeah, anybody can do that. That's nothing. He could change the approach this year and say, I'm just going to try to grind out results, but he's not, because let's call a spade here. Unless we finished a point behind City, which we're not going to, what is the difference between finishing second and finishing fourth?
I think for people, Paul, it's about progress, isn't it? But what I will say is I don't think there is any difference between finishing 19 points behind second and 2 points behind second, by the way, because as a Manchester United fan, I'm interested in winning things, Paulie. So whether we finish 19 points behind Man City in second or whether we finish 2 points behind them in second, that wouldn't be good enough, like, for someone who wants to win all the time. What difference does it make? Who remembers the points difference in 10 years' time?
So the question is it progress to abandon your principles and just grind out results and finish second, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 points off of City, or to stick with it so your players learn the system, learn what is responsible of them, understand this is what I have to do, or you keep them in this system so that they're learning, even if you don't have the right piece to the puzzle. And some results come and some results don't come, and a team catches you and you finish third or fourth. But now when you get the right piece, you don't need to tinker and change. You just plug it in. Remember, last year, they could have been a different team if Ollie abandoned this 4-2-3-1 and playing the way he wants to play. But he insisted on it, even though he had to use Andreas Pereira and Jesse Lingard in that role. And when Bruno Fernandes arrived, all he had to do was plug in Bruno. Nobody else had to change because they had been working on this the entire time. So you see where the holes are, but you keep Martial where he is, or you keep Rashford where he is, and Greenwood's doing his. When you plug in those holes, when you get the right midfielder to come in, when you get that right winger, all of a sudden the rest is going to click, because Wan-Bissaka now knows what he's responsible for. Shaw knows what he's responsible for, and he's sticking with it. And this is the system that he has insisted on the youth teams playing. So the U23s play this way, the U18s play this way, and those teams are having a lot of success, despite the fact that those teams are underage. The U23s are made up of a bunch of 18-year-olds. The U18s are made up of a bunch of 16-year-olds. But we're seeing that it's working there because they have the right players. This United team doesn't have the right players. You don't need world-class players to beat Crystal Palace, but you need a right winger. They didn't have a right winger. They had Mason Greenwood. He's not a right winger. He doesn't provide any creativity. Marcus Rashford isn't a creative player from the front. He's, like I said, he's someone that can make the final pass, but you need the pass before the pass. They had two defensive midfielders because they didn't have that more progressive attacking midfielder in. There are holes in the squad that when you finally you don't need to go out and get the best one. In this case, Sancho happens to be the best, but he also happens to be the most perfect fit for this system. But in midfield, you don't need to go out and get the best midfielder, whoever that may be. You just need to get the right one to plug him into the system, which will allow Pogba or in the future, a Van de Beek to go and be that guy and make everything else work better.
Yeah, Paulie, there's a question coming here from Christian who says, guys, do you think that Lindelof and Maguire can win Premier League with a great DM in front of him? Look, Christian, the jury's out, I still think, on those two. Paulie might disagree with me because I know he's got his opinions on the back four. But aside from Maguire and Lindelof, this is what my issue is with this argument with the Ollie outers and changing the manager. I think there are too many players in this current squad that are fundamentally flawed that I defy any coach in the world can change them into the players that Manchester United need. Like they can make them the players that Paulie said we need to plug those gaps. So I'm not sure any coach in the world can make Maguire go faster. I'm not sure any coach in the world can make Lindelof go faster or can make him any stronger than what he is. I'm not sure any coach in the world can make McTominay, especially Matic at his age, and Fred more creative than they already are. I agree with some people's argument that I've heard that we could maybe do better with the front three that we have, because that is where the talent really is in this squad. I think in that front three, front four, that's where we are really talented. And you could argue then maybe there is a coach that could do better with them. But for me, when you look at all the great teams, you have to do more than just attack well to win a title. You look at the way Liverpool ended up winning their title, Paulie, they did it by improving their back five. They brought in Van Dijk and Alisson, and that made all the difference, and they become a title winning side. The difference between Man City...
How much work...
this year, sorry, Paulie, the difference with Man City this year is their defence is better as well. You need to be able to have all aspects of a team to win a league, not just rely on front three. We are the second top goal scorers, but we don't look like winning the league. How much building and how much work did Liverpool do before they added Alisson and Van Dijk? Those were the final pieces. How much work, everybody says we're not even close to City. It's such a false comparison. Now I get, obviously, City we're in the same league and we have to get close to them. But City have had a 4-year head start on what we're building here. When Pep arrived, De Bruyne was already in that team. Aguero was in that team. David Silva was in that team. Fernandinho was in that team. Raheem Sterling was in that team. Pep basically said, okay, my attack is pretty much set. Midfield, defense. And his first season, he was relatively, they only spent 100-something million, which is what we spent. But he got in Ilkay Gundogan. He's still here. Zinchenko. He's now a very big part of their team. Leroy Sané, okay, he didn't work out, but they sold him for good money. John Stones, he's still here. Gabriel Jesus, he's still here. Claudio Bravo, there's your goalkeeper. It didn't work because Claudio Bravo couldn't catch the ball, couldn't use his hands, and their defense was still weak. So the following year, that's when he went on his big spree. But who did he buy? He just spent a ton of money on fullbacks and defenders. Ederson to replace Bravo, Kyle Walker, Danilo, Mendy, and Laporte. He also bought Bernardo Silva. But how was he able to do that? Willie Caballero, Gael Clichy, Jesus Navas, Bakary Sagna, Pablo Zabaleta. All of them were just released. There was no, City had no problem saying, we don't need to sell you. We'll just get rid of you. United don't operate like that. They believe in protecting value, which is dumb. City are smarter than them. But because all that money came on the books, they weren't looking at Gael Clichy and saying,
we're going to sign you to a new 4-year contract and hopefully sell you so we can get a fee. They were just like, screw it. Money off the books is better. And what happened the next year? Pep looked at his team and he said, all I need is Riyad Mahrez. And then the next year, he brought in Angelino, Rodri, and Cancelo. 3 more players to just slowly start it. But notice how he hasn't touched that attack because they're still here. And then this year, when he needs to spend 70 million pounds, he could say, all right, I'm just going to spend it on one defender because that's what I need. I mean, he also spent it on Ake and Torres, but I only needed one defender. Versus United, when Pep arrived, that's when Mourinho arrived. They brought in Eric Bailly. Okay, he's still here, but he's a fringe part of the team. They spent copious amounts on Zlatan Ibrahimovic, knowing that you're going to have to replace him in a year or two. That's just dumb money. They brought in Henrik Mkhitaryan. He lasted a year and a half. They brought in Paul Pogba. Okay, he's still here. And then the next year, Lindelof is still here. Lukaku, already gone. Matic, well, he was old, so that's going to last you 4 years, and this is 4 years. Alexis Sanchez, he was old, already gone. So all the while, everybody that Pep swung and missed on a few, but he inherited a team that is there, and he supplemented it very well. United started building a team and kept building it with players that they needed to replace. So they brought in 2 center backs. So last year, when they needed to sign someone, when they needed to sign a bunch of players, they had to spend a ton of money on a center back. And this year, when you can only spend 75 million, they don't need one player. They need a lot of players. Yeah. And so Pep has had a huge head start on what Ollie is trying to build.
But United, for me, Paulie, they've been recruiting for coaches rather than for a system. This is the problem. We are, I mean, you talk there, I mean, obviously, Mourinho, we've only had 2 managers, obviously, since Guardiola's time, Mourinho and obviously Ollie, put 2 very different managers in terms of the types of players that they want. And this is the issue. This is why you can't build. And I think that this is another flaw within the club as to another block of success, why they will struggle. Because you look at City and they are buying for a system under a manager that they've given time. You know, we are, if we get rid of the manager, you're still going to see the same recruitment flaws with this club, Paulie, because the next manager who comes in, I guarantee, will want something completely different to Ollie. The only coach that I could see at the moment that would probably be happy with this group of players and want to play a similar sort of ways, maybe Pochettino, but he's just gone to PSG. If you're looking at the likes of Max Allegri as your next manager, or Nagelsmann, or even Simeone, some of the names that have been touted about, they're going to want completely different players to what Ollie's been looking at and what the club's been looking at for the last 3 or 4 years. So there is another problem. This is another reason why, for me, changing the manager will not guarantee success, because then you go into another rebuild process, Paulie, with another manager.
Yeah, and yesterday there was a huge commotion on the social media before the match because Ollie downplayed the idea of making big signings this summer, which is what he's supposed to do. You know, last year he said, we'll be able to take advantage of the pandemic. How'd that work out? You don't want to tell people that we have money, but you think about this. Again, United financially have issues because when it goes back pre-Jose, but Jose just amplified it. You signed Zlatan Ibrahimovic. You paid him 19 point something million in wages, which ended up increasing to 22 million because he hit his goal bonus. That's before win bonuses, appearance bonuses, the League Cup win bonus, like 22 million, the signing on fee, the fee that they had to pay to Raiola. That is not cheap. And you did that for Zlatan, knowing he's going to be here 1 year, maybe 2. You're going to have to spend money on that exact position sometime soon. And guess what? He missed his extension would have automatically triggered if he made, I forgot how many appearances it was, but because of his injury, he missed that by 4, which meant his contract at the end of the year was done. So when we signed him over the summer, that was a new contract with new bonuses and a new fee to pay out to Mino Raiola to organize that, which made it even more expensive. And on top of that, we spent 75 million on another striker. So, and guess what? That adds up because there are rules in place about how much you could spend. Now, City ignore those rules, but United don't. They also have comparing their owners are different. One, let's just say that, for example, let's say that you and I are going to go play the stock market, and we both say I am willing to lose 20% of my net worth on the side. If the market goes bust and I lose all my money, that's fine. I'm okay with losing 20%. You're okay with losing 20%. Yeah. Let's say I have 100 million and you have 500 million. Well, 20% of your 500 million is a lot more than what I could spend. Yeah. So that's the case here. The United's owners or investors, et cetera, and City's owners have the wealth of an entire country backing them, and they don't care if they lose it because they just want to win, which is not a good financial strategy. And United's owners want to remain solvent and not make the club bankrupt. But the whole point of in 2 years, we signed a striker, we signed a center back. A year later, we had to sign a striker and a center back, and then we went out and got Alexis Sanchez and paid God only knows how much for it. It's not that they didn't back him the next season. It's that they literally said, you spent all the money already. We don't have any more. And then in a pandemic, it was hard to spend money, and we still went out and tried to do what we could do. But there's just holes in this squad, and you can only make so much out of what you got. And we'll look at this comment. We say Mason's not a right winger, but how hard could it be to tell whoever is playing right wing to keep their width and try to cross the ball into the box more than cutting in? Mason Greenwood kept his width last night. He kept his width. And look, but then he crosses it in. But guess what? A cross is not an efficient method. Crossing it in to one striker, maybe two, to go up against two center backs, maybe a fullback, plus a midfielder. There's 2% of crosses end up in the back of the net. It's an inefficient method. And how hard is it to cross it? Well, he's a right winger, but he's left-footed. So his crossing from his left is better than it is from his right. So he's got to try to put the ball on his left. It's not easy, but and you also the skill in crossing isn't just I'm going to put it in the mixer and hope my guy comes down to it. It's timing it with the right run. Near post cross, back post cross, into the six, towards the penalty spot. Where is the run? There's a lot of skill that just goes into crossing the ball. And Greenwood's not that kind of player. And Rashford's not that kind of player. So we're missing that. They are both players that want to get towards the middle and score goals. So on their own, individually, they're good players. Greenwood.
United have flawed on a couple of counts with crossing from wide areas at the moment, because one, they don't really have the players to do it, like you said, with the exception of maybe Luke Shaw or Alex Tellers when he plays, and two, they don't have the type of strikers that, apart from Cavani, so when Cavani doesn't play, they don't have the type of strikers, Paulie, they've got that instinct to try and get on the end of a cross. We see so many balls put across the face of the goal with United, and just nobody's attacking them. I think Dan James against Chelsea put a good one across where Mason was on his heels in the middle of the park. Last night, there was one that Mason put right across the box, and I think it was a great interception by the Crystal Palace defender, but there was only Marcus Rashford coming in on it at the back post. There was nobody making a run at the centre of the box. We don't really
Marcus
have
Rashford was not making a run there. Marcus Rashford was stagnant.
Yeah, he was there. He was just
that is the problem. There, yeah. We keep hearing, because while Edinson Cavani does nothing, we keep hearing about his movement in the box, etc. Well, you have to get the ball near the box for that to be effective. You need to get the ball into the final third for someone to overlap and put a cross in where Cavani's movement will help. And United have always been a team that need all 10 outfield players to contribute to that. All right, that's why Anthony Martial Solskjaer keeps throwing him out there, because other than scoring goals, he's doing all the other things. All right, maybe he's not pressing with the same intensity, and that's what people are noticing, but he's helping out. He's linking the play up. Cavani doesn't do that. No. Eric Bailly doesn't pass forward. That's why Lindelof is preferred to him, because if you're going to play with two midfielders who don't pass forward, you need your center backs to be able to do it. That's why Maguire is undroppable, because he adds all that creativity and all that forward movement. And That's a problem that your center back is doing. Your center back should not be the best one at that. But you need to get the ball there. And we keep hearing that Cavani's movement will, Greenwood and Rashford will learn from it. And you could keep talking about that as I keep watching Marcus Rashford and Mason Greenwood not make those runs. And while Mason Greenwood whips a beautiful cross across the 6, and Rashford only reacts to it after it comes across. You know who is learning from Cavani and who is making these runs and getting himself open? Dan James is the one getting on the end of these headers in the box, the smallest guy, because he's making the smart runs. He's the only one learning from Cavani.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Paulie, you got a comment that you want to bring up here? I will leave you to it, and I'll let you read it out, mate.
Yeah, we all cry for someone to cross the ball in the box, but Ollie somehow managed to make us think that Tellez is not ready. It's the same. First of all, Luke Shaw completed 4 out of his 6 crosses last night, and he's got a much better crossing percentage than Tellez. Second of all, Luke Shaw does a lot more than Tellez. Tellez doesn't help us get the ball into the final third. All of this it's just useless if you can't get the ball forward. And Luke Shaw does a lot of that, but also he passes into the box. Luke Shaw completed 5 passes into the box that weren't crosses. There's diversity in your attack. If all you want to do is get guys forward to whip in crosses, you're going to have problems. That's going to turn into the David Moyes show. It's very easy to defend. Remember Fulham's defender, who was a no one, coming out and being like, it was really easy to play against Manchester United because all they did was cross. You have to be diverse.
If anybody's got any doubts about Luke Shaw, just look at him last night. He was head and shoulders Manchester United's best player last night. Not hard, I know, but I think even in a game where United struggled, I still think Luke, with the things that he did them very well, Paulie, and that can't be said for a lot of the players last night. You know, we can talk about, obviously, the gaps in this squad, but let's not make any bones about it, Paulie. Some players really let themselves down last night.
They did.
You can talk about coaching and you can talk about recruitment all you want, Paulie, but they looked a real lack of, I don't know, something about... I was a bit worried about the drop-off last night. I've got to be honest with you, Paulie, because apart from the lack of quality, I saw a lack of attitude as well. And you do wonder whether certain things are starting to happen within this squad because they don't look very happy. There's a video that's very viral today going around about a dispute with Marcus Rashford and Maguire on the pitch. I don't know whether you saw that, Paulie. I don't know whether you've listened to it. You know, very, very sort of an angry outburst at each other, a frustration there. And you do wonder whether there are sort of issues in the squad. We hear that Martial's got a knock, but yeah, he wasn't involved at all yesterday. Is that a knock? Is there something more to it? Martial, I think, is quite a popular member of the group. I don't know, but we feel like we're at a crossroads with this team and this club at the moment. Yeah,
look, I don't care that Rashford and Maguire are yelling at each other. They should be.
Yeah,
because it's your job. It's your job to yell if you're the captain, it's your job to yell at players. And if players are frustrated, then they're going to yell back. That's what players do. That's what everybody.
As Lindelof last season in the Europa
That's
League.
What everybody does.
Yeah,
I don't care about that. I think it's starting to just drain on these guys. You know, look, the player Bruno and Rashford haven't gotten any rest. They're exhausted. We saw this at the beginning of January. I always say it's not the festive period that kills you. It's the time after the festive period. The festive period is what wears you out. And then January is what really kills you because there's no let up. And we got to get them a little bit of rest. And then they started to look bright again. Yeah. And then what happened? Everybody started getting hurt. Pogba got hurt. Now Van de Beek is hurt. Mata's hurt. And now there's no one. They don't have the chance to rest and rest up. And we're just looking at another dead period. You also have to understand there's no relax for these people.
Yeah.
Most players, you're going home and that's it. Like Ollie pointed this out the other day and he said, look, it's the same for every team, but the mental toll that lockdowns have on players, that you get up, you go to training, you go home and you sit in your house and there's nothing else to do. There's no way to relax or anything. It's having its toll. As bad as United have been, look, they're still in second place. They've won how many games in their last how many and nobody's caught them? It's affecting everyone.
Yeah.
It's not just United. Chelsea brought in a new manager and they've won some games. And then there's some games where they still can't score despite all that talent.
Yeah.
So every team is going through these ebbs and flows and these periods. You look at United last night, what do you expect from that team? That team had good players, but none of them fit together. Cavani's a player who doesn't help you in the link-up play. He is a player who needs service. That's everybody. That's the buzzword. He needs service to be good. Okay, well, Mason Greenwood and Marcus Rashford are not the players to give you that. So that's not going to be effective. But again, you look, Martial was hurt. There's nobody on the bench. That's not to absolve Solskjaer of blame. There are very coachable things that this team is doing constantly that shouldn't be happening. How come no one will turn on the ball? That's the first and simple thing was just turn on the freaking ball. You had time and space. And how many times do we see Cavani drop and get himself open for a pass? Rashford drop and get himself open for a pass. They make the pass through the lines, and on their first touch, they just pass it back to Matic or back to Maguire. Why? How come, you get the ball out wide to Rashford and his first instinct is to get it onto his right foot, which involves stopping and turning inward. When it wasn't working, why didn't we just switch Rashford and Greenwood for a small period? Rashford's been tremendous on the right side this year.
Yeah.
So this way, when you get it out wide to him, he takes it on his right foot and he can keep going straight. He doesn't have to turn inside to get it onto his dominant foot. The reason that we probably didn't do that is because we were playing with Bailly at center back, and which meant there was nothing going to the right side. Everything went down the left because Bailly wasn't passing forward. He only passed to Maguire or Wan-Bissaka.
What about this comment here from Yash Dai where he says, what do you guys make of all this comment about Diallo that he didn't know who to sub off? Now, I've got to be honest with you, Pauly. I think he's looking at that team last night, especially with no Martial there, and he's thinking, this is my best front three. Anything that I do to change this, I'm going to weaken it. Now, he did bring Dan James on, and you could argue that actually in the last couple of weeks, Dan James is an argument to say that he can be part of the best front three because he's obviously been in good form. But I think on paper, that is the three that Ollie wanted to start. And I think he looked round at his bench yesterday and thought, anything that I do is going to weaken it. And even when he brought Dan James on, he had to move Mason Greenwood to sort of centre forward. And I don't think, even though a lot of people think Mason Greenwood's going to be the centre forward for Manchester United in years to come, at the moment, I don't think he plays that position anywhere near good enough for us. So therefore, he weakened the team by putting Dan James on, not necessarily by bringing Dan on himself, no disrespect to Dan, but by the players having to change positions, so Mason having to move to number 9.
But Cavani had to come off.
Yeah, I know.
Cavani had to come off. He was terrible. The answer, it's a lot like this tweet. There's just so much going on here that everybody's talking. Why did Matic drop down? Maguire went up. Why did Matic and Fred start? Because you needed two players. McTominay's not going to offer you any creativity in midfield either. But why is Matic dropping when Maguire goes up? Because you gotta make sure that you don't concede on the other end.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why he didn't bring on Diallo, is because you got to make sure you don't concede on the other end. If we were down 1-0, remember what happened when we were on the opening day of the season, we were 2-0 down and Donny van de Beek scored. And what did he do? He took off Fosu Mensah and he brought on another attacker and he moved McTominay to right back and dropped Bruno. So our midfield was Bruno and Van de Beek. Why? Well, I'm trying to get attacking players on, but if I concede another goal, what difference does it make if we're 2-1 down or 3-1 down? Well, it makes a difference if you're 0-0 or 1-0 down. So if you were 1-0 down, maybe he brings him on because what difference is 1-0 and 2-0?
Yeah.
You got to make sure that you don't lose it. And Diallo is 5 foot what? And looks like he's in middle school playing against a big and physical Palace side. Is this the time to bring him on? If Solskjaer has been, we all say this, like, why aren't you playing the youngsters? And what about, here's a good tweet. He could have played Ahmad. He could have played a Shortire. Like, he may not be ready, but we'll never know because he doesn't play him. He could have brought Galbraith into senior football months ago for situations like that. You're right. We do not know because we only get to see them playing in the games. Guess who gets to see them in training every day? The coaches. They will know if these guys are ready yet. Remember, like Angel Gomez and Tahith Chong were way better than U23 football last year. But they came into whenever they got chances in the senior team, they did nothing. But then they'd go back, they'd play in the U23 and they'd score 4 goals between the two of them. And now they're playing senior football elsewhere and they're both still doing nothing. So you don't know if they're ready. The coaches have a better grasp on this than we do. And Solskjaer has been nothing but consistent when it comes with the young players. You don't want to bring them into a bad situation where we're looking at them like you have to be the savior. It's very rare for someone to step in and do that. Remember, Marcus Rashford only got a chance because everybody was hurt and he did step in. But when the news broke that Marcus Rashford was playing, we were laughing. We were like, seriously, like we're relying on an academy kid who does, he didn't even have a Wikipedia page at the time. And we're like, we're relying on this to beat Midtjylland. Are you serious? And then he came through. But most other players don't. And you don't want to bring them into a situation where we're now saying, hey, we're asking you to be the savior. And I don't know if you're going to be ready to handle the physicality of it. Maybe he would have been, but I understand why you're not. Like Mason Greenwood didn't really start starting games until Project Restart, where 1, he bulked up during lockdown, and 2, the rest of our team was there. We had Pogba in there. We had Matic. We had Bruno. Like there were plenty of other people to keep your eyes on besides Mason Greenwood.
Yeah. Guys, look, Paulie, one come here again from yesterday. Thank you for all your interaction today, by the way, guys. There's been some great comments coming, some great questions. Do you guys think Carrick and McKenna can coach us to a title, or a club like Manchester United deserve more? Now, look, Paulie, I've got to be honest with you. I mean, some people don't forget, the coaches weren't involved for a couple of weeks at United because they had to self-isolate. Some people are attributing that to this little run that United got. I think it's over 4 hours now since Manchester United have scored a goal. I'll be honest with you, I don't know enough about Michael Carrick as a coach right now. I do believe that Kieran McKenna is a top-class coach, so I don't have any doubt about that. I think Kieran McKenna is a very good coach, but I think it's, we had a comment earlier in the show, Paulie, where people were saying, look, Ollie's openly admitted that he does very little coaching with this team. It's more the man. Yeah, there we go. That's the comment I was looking for. Also from Yash, Ollie came out and told us that he isn't a coach, more of a man manager. So if I get it right, we're currently coached by Carrick and McKenna. But that is the same for a lot of clubs, Paulie. We can go back to, I know times have changed, but Sir Alex Ferguson did very little coaching on the training ground at Manchester United. He didn't. And that's why you saw him have a vast number of assistant managers. I'm sure we've talked about this before. He worked with the likes of Carlos Queiroz, Steve McLaren, even Walter Smith, who was a famous Scottish coach. And then towards the end, obviously, Mike Field and Rennie Mullersley. All these coaches are known for being very good on the grass coaches, as we call them, and that allowed Ferguson to take a back seat and the day-to-day training and just concentrate on running other aspects of the club that people forget are actually very important. Dealing with human beings and other aspects of a football club is very important, Paulie. So, look, I don't want to put this on Kieran McKenna and Michael Carrick, because ultimately Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is the manager of the club, and his training methods aren't right and tactics aren't right. Whether he has much involvement in it or not, the axe has to fall on his head because he's paid in that position. But, it is an interesting point that Yash makes there.
Yeah, but all right. So we're looking through all these comments, and Yash, it's coming off as you want immediacy. You're looking for something to blame, because the fact of the matter is, it's boring to sit here in September and say we're going to run into problems this year. And when we do run into those problems, now you want heads to roll. Or in January, when people are celebrating, hey, we have the most non-penalty goals in the league. And you're like, yeah, but most of them have come in 2 games. And people got really mad at me for saying that. They're like, well, every team that leads the league in goal scoring has big games like this. And it was, yes, but when you take those 2 games out, it paints a much different story. And for most teams that lead the league in goal scoring, that's not what happens when you take out their top 2 results. And the underlying numbers suggest this is not going to be sustained at all. And suddenly it's not being sustained. And when you know that that's going to happen, and then it starts happening, and now somebody wants to blame someone. So remember, Michael Carrick and Kieran McKenna were not hired by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to pick these 2 guys, and he got that wrong. Like Jose Mourinho hired both of them to be coaches, and maybe Jose got it wrong. That's not to say that they're the right guys, but to put it on to say that Ole has publicly said, oh, I don't do the managing, I'm more of a man manager. Yeah. I mean, and you're buying that? Since when do we believe what Ole says at press conferences? And since when has Ole ever gone out there and sung his own praises? When has he ever gone out there and taken credit for anything? When we win, it's the players. When we lose, he takes the blame. He stood on the microphone, in front of a microphone after the 6-1 loss, and he said, this is my fault. I'm the one that takes the blame for this, which is what a coach is supposed to do, which is why it's always a big deal when the Mourinhos or the Lampards throw their players under the bus after a loss. That's not what you want your coach to do. It's your coach's fault when you lose, and it's the player's fault when you win. And Ole very much buys in that. The most arrogant or self-serving thing he's probably ever said in a press conference was last year when they asked him, you're the first person to beat Mourinho and Guardiola in the space of 4 days. And he said 3. That was the most self-serving thing he's ever done. Everything else
compared to the 2 managers that were before him, Paulie, I'll take one self-serving comment in 2.5 years compared to what we used to have week in, week out with those guys.
Exactly. Everything when he has never passed up an opportunity to praise the people he works with. That's the kind of person he is. So he, yes, when it was talked about transfers, he subtly shifted we've got great players in the academy and we can come up, and people went nuts over that. And I'm like, he spent last year, all he did was talk up Garner and Chong and Gomez, and he handed them 0 league starts. So let him talk up the academy all he wants. He talked up Jesse Lingard and then shipped him off to West Ham. He talked up Alexis and never gave him the light of day. So yes, he's going to talk up it's not me. Kieran and Michael, they handle that. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer went to Cardiff, a relegation side, and got them to score more goals than before he was there. And he didn't do that with Kieran McKenna, and he didn't do that with Michael Carrick. And you know how difficult that is to get a relegation team, a team with no talent, to start scoring more goals? Yeah, he opened things up. He got them to score more goals. As a result, they conceded more goals. Yeah. And they went down, but they were going down without him. He made them a much better attacking side. Yeah. That wasn't, wasn't McKenna. And so, yes, Kieran McKenna plays a big part in this team. Michael Carrick plays a big part in this team. McPhelan plays a big part in this team. And I have a lot of questions about McPhelan. Here's the thing. If Sir Alex Ferguson was the manager of United in 2021, Kieran McKenna might be a coach at United. Michael Carrick might be a coach at United. McPhelan would not be.
No.
That might be your problem, but that doesn't mean that Ollie's not doing anything himself.
Look, Mike Phelan, I think, had 2 stints as a coach at the club. I think he was a coach at the club in the early 90s, and then he came back and did it again. And that was the beauty of what Ferguson did. He freshened up his coaching team. And we'll see if Ollie does the same. We've already had a little bit of a clue that he might. I mean, he's brought Darren Fletcher in the last few months, obviously, another little cog to hope refresh it. And I'm sure he'll do more in the time to come. I just want to finish with one last comment that's come in.
I have to say something before we wrap up, because this is a great comment. Fantastic comment, how you could say, I don't want to come across reactionary, but with this board, we all know that this summer could easily be another underwhelming one. So yeah, you're not being reactionary at all as you talk about the board, who have the second highest net spend in Europe over the past 5 years. That is higher than PSG, who spent 400 million on 2 players. And United have outspent them all except for the one team that didn't follow the financial fair play rules. So for the teams that are playing by the rules, United have been spending more money than everyone. And you're going to say, oh, they're probably not going to spend. They're going to be cheap. United's issue hasn't been that they're not spending money. It's been that they're spending money on the wrong players.
Yeah, and exactly. But and what I want to say to these people is, if you think come August, September that the winter has been underwhelming, like you are predicting now, don't change your opinion on that in January, February, March, when nothing will have changed because United don't buy in January. Those underwhelming aspects will still be festering on and will look worse come March, after 6 months down the line. But I just want to finish with this comment quickly. It's coming from Pappy, Pauly. The team is very imbalanced. Ollie is doing his best now. The players look tired now. I wanted to bring up this, Pauly.
That's so reasonable and well-balanced. We don't do that here. Reasonable and well-balanced takes.
This team is looking imbalanced because of the points we made before, Pauly. You get an imbalanced team when you buy for a manager or a coach rather than a system, Pauly. This squad is looking imbalanced because it's got players in it that has been made up of probably 2 or even 3 managers' philosophies. That's why.
But also remember, Greenwood's from the academy, Rashford's from the academy. Cavani was supposed to give us something different, not be the starter. Martial was still supposed to do that, and we're relying on that to finish up answering Yash's last comment of, can we go another season for fighting for top 4 with McFred? No, you never fight for top 4 with McFred. All right, look, I mean, McTominay and Fred have started 16 games together in all competitions this year. They've won 43% of them. They get 1.75 points per match. In the Premier League together, they have started 23 games over the last 2 years. We have won 43% of them, 1.74 points per match. That is not a top 4 team. We get to the top 4, our results that we finished in the top 4 because Paul Pogba came back into the team and we won every game in Project Restart. And we've been back in the top. We've been in this top race this year when Paul Pogba came back into the team. We have papered over cracks a few times this season when Pogba's been hurt, but this team needs Paul Pogba. That's not the be all end all. There was a comment earlier about Pogba and how we didn't, we still struggled against Sheffield. Yes, we need Paul Pogba, but he's not the only one we need. But if you take him out of the team, you will still have a massive size crater that filling in the other holes, you now just created a third hole. So you need Paul Pogba back. You need to fill in the other teams. You need to fill in the other spots, and then you need depth to be able to survive an injury.
Pauly, can I this on this show today have the honor of asking you the final question before we wrap up?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Sorry for everyone else. We have had somebody comment, but I have to ask Pauly this. I had Gary Neville on my commentary last night, and he had one of his poignant sound bites that he often drops out in his commentary, and he said that United may well now be sleepwalking into a race for the top 4. Where are you on this point? I mean, we are second. We have still got that nice little buffer to 5th place. But do you see this team actually now could find themselves getting embroiled in a race for top 4 when it looked like they were going to be in a title race?
Yeah, it never looked like that they were going to be in the title race. They got to the top, but we said this on Tuesday. They got to the top partially by virtue of other teams not being good either. Their underlying numbers have suggested they are one of the 4 best teams in England. Yeah. So they are where they are. Those underlying numbers, they do account for the first 3 games, which, we know that was basically the preseason. If you start from after the Tottenham game, they are the second best team, and they have the second best underlying numbers, but well behind City. So are they going to be in a top 4 race? Yes. They should finish in the top 4. If they don't finish in the top 4 now, then they really did collapse. But ultimately, like we said earlier, all the problems that this team has, no one's caught them yet because every team has their own problems too. Every team is going to be inconsistent. Leicester dropped points to Burnley yesterday. So they'll be in the top 4 race, but I think Ollie knows that, which is why he's staying the path, because you weren't ever in this title race. And what's the difference between finishing 2nd versus finishing 4th? If you continue to build what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
If you finish on more points than last year, there's progress there. If your players are getting better into the system, that all you need to do is plug those holes and you're going to be a much better team. That is progress. And ultimately, you got to remember, we set out year 1, this is what we're going to do. Year 2, this is what we're going to do. Year 3, but here's what I need in year 1 to do what I want to do. Well, they got you Harry Maguire, they got you Aaron Wan-Bissaka, they got you Bruno Fernandes, and then you went to them in year 2 and you said, I need that right winger, I need something, I need this, I need that. They didn't get you the right winger you asked for. They gave you a right winger that's not going to be ready this year, and a right winger who wasn't going to even be around until at the very least January, who is not ready yet. The board didn't give him what he needs, and I think they're on the same page, Ollie and his bosses, and that allows him to manage the way he wants to do it, because he knows, I don't need to just change things up and just to grind out a result, because what progress would that be?
Exactly. No, thank you for that, Pauly. Yes, there's one final comment. You put loads in today. Yes, thank you. Will you do a show before City game? Unfortunately, no. We do the United Happy Hour every Tuesday and Thursday, but all being well, as long as everything's all right, we will be with you on Tuesday, yes, and we will be obviously dissecting that Man City game and talking about how it went and looking obviously ahead to the
hopefully it finishes 0-0.
Yeah, and looking ahead to Europa League game on next Thursday. It's a real heavy schedule for United. One of the comments said earlier, said that the players look tired. I really hope they don't, because this next 2 or 3 weeks now for United is going to sort of make or break their season. The cup competitions that they're still in, they have games in that, and obviously they need to finish the league strongly. But we'll join you again next Tuesday, Pauly. Thanks ever so much for joining me, mate, as always. And like I say, thank you to everyone who has been in the comments. Do like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend, guys, and let's hope for a miracle in the derby.